Uh, in this bad weather, this is quite a tribute. My first one, well, my name is Marilyn Petito Devaney. And the way that the council procedure is, if the nominee is in a councilor's district, you preside. So I am honored to preside today for Jennifer Currie. So I do have to say this, that I had a wonderful experience yesterday, and it was a first. And I think, unless history will prove me wrong, first time in the history of Harvard, Massachusetts, we have a governor that has nominated a judge. Amazing. So this is the furthest in my district, Harvard. So, I mean, people come here for the hearing, very easy. I have Boston, Brookline, Lexington, so they're all close. But I thought, wow, this is quite a thing. And for Harvard. And so my luck, we had a snowstorm, but I could not believe over 17 people came. Judges that I voted on, it was so great to see. Judge Maida, who, one of my proudest votes, she is at the Ayer Court now. Now, why did I go to Ayer? Because Harvard doesn't have a court. So not great in geography, but I figured that's pretty close. So we went to Ayer. And I just want to thank everybody in that Ayer District Court. They couldn't have been more gracious to me. I mean, I felt like I was a queen. They brought me all over the building. I met everybody. They were so considerate of me. I couldn't believe it. They escorted me in, escorted me out. I couldn't believe it. I really didn't deserve all of that. But I do want to let people know that Ayer District Court is a wonderful court, and there's wonderful people working in there. No one should be concerned about going into that courthouse, because I know these people really care. So having said that, welcome. And it's really a pleasure to meet you. And you came to the diner and you had your Belgian waffle. So now you're in the Hall of Fame. So I just, so having said all of that, I do want to ask that people will all put their cell phone away. I'm begging councils, put the cell phone away. And you know, we're only here one hearing a week. Let's stay to the end of the hearing. I'm asking that, please, in respect to the importance of this position, a judge, and to be respectful to this nominee, not to leave while she's still answering questions, because the public deserves that we hear every word this nominee says. So I can't say that enough. The other thing is, I know that my counselor to my left, we have been trying to get the person who is sending this hearing out to show the people that are talking. Makes sense to me. So I'm asking again if he'll do that, because people are calling, and they've been calling and asking. We don't know who's speaking. We only see the nominee and the witness. Doesn't make sense. So we're going to try again, Tara. But anyway, so having said all of that, I welcome you all. And I'm first going to start with your witnesses. So your first witness is the Honorable Anthony Marotta. What a pleasure. How many years ago did I vote for you? 12 years.
Am I here or?
You sit beside the nominee.
Thank you.
It's been that long since you came.
So that's it.
I can't believe it. Well, it was my pleasure to vote for you.
Thank you.
I've heard great things.
Great decision. My name is Anthony Marotta. I'm an associate justice in the Worcester Juvenile Court. And as you heard me tell Councilor Devaney, it's been hard for me to believe, but it's been 12 years since I sat before this esteemed council. I truly remind myself every day how fortunate I am to be a judge in the juvenile court, particularly in Worcester. I'm honored and humbled that Attorney Currie has asked me to speak on her behalf. I hold Attorney Currie in the highest regard. My colleagues in the Worcester Juvenile Court and I are united in our support of this nomination, and we respectfully request you confirm Attorney Currie as the next Associate Justice of our court. I've known Attorney Currie for more than 15 years. first interaction was when I was a prosecutor and she was a new attorney practicing in the Leominster District Court. I have a very clear memory of opposing her on some complex and sensitive criminal cases. From the outset, I was impressed with her exceptional professionalism, her knowledge of the law, and her steadfast resolve on behalf of her clients. Even as a new lawyer, she possessed an understanding way beyond her experience, and she was pleasant and reasonable to deal with. Over the course of the last 12 years, Attorney Currie has appeared before me countless times, at least 2 or 3 times a week. I have only positive things to say about her courtroom presence and demeanor. She's always prepared, even-tempered, and a strong advocate for her clients. Attorney Currie has become a capable, reliable, and trustworthy practitioner in the Worcester Juvenile Court. I personally have called upon her a number of times to accept appointment on particularly complex or sensitive cases, or to deal with an issue with one of the court-appointed attorneys that she supervises. My interactions with her and the results are always the same: professional, courteous, and attention to detail. As juvenile court judges, we are always mindful of the fact that every case that comes before us, whether we're being asked to detain an accused, lock up an offender, release an accused, reunify with a family, or to terminate parental rights, every case that we're dealing with someone's children. That's an ominous responsibility, and Attorney Currie understands that. She has demonstrated a commitment to that responsibility. She is a juvenile court practitioner. She has diligently represented children and parents before our court for many years. She has proven herself to be caring, compassionate, and thoughtful, all traits that will serve her and our community well. Thank you for your consideration, and I ask that you favorably on this nomination. Be happy to expand on anything or any questions anybody might have.
Any questions from the councilors?
See you, Judge.
Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you. Doesn't feel like 12 years. Thank you. I'm a little bit more relaxed this time than I was last.
Notice that.
You notice my hands stopped shaking.
Thank you for coming. I think it's really a tribute for you to come because you're in the juvenile court. And so I'd just like to ask you, you're here for this nominee, so you've known her for quite a while. So if you were going to advise her, how has the juvenile court changed in any way in the 12 years that you've been there?
I think the job has gotten more difficult. I think we have become much more of a care and protection court than we were when I started. Our numbers are much higher in care and protections than they were when I started. It's every day I see the advice that I would give to her. Every day I see something I've never seen before. And when I think I've seen it all, or I think I've heard it all, it changes. And there's something new and different and disturbing every day. The biggest change is towards we are way more care and protection cases than we had 12 years ago.
I mean, we see society changing and that's it. And what is so concerning is that all of these terrible killings of a principal in a school and 6th grader, shot 3 times and dead. I mean, these are youngsters that are doing this too. So that it's two-sided, but you have to make big decisions in the court, We
have a real problem with guns. We have a real problem with opiates. And we have a real crisis with mental health. And add to that, poor parenting. Those 4 things are a recipe for problems. But primarily the guns that you mentioned that. I mean, when I started 12 years ago, I can remember my first justice saying, "You have criminal experience. There's a gun case. I want you to take the gun case." Now I probably have 1 or 2 gun cases a week. It's just.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Oh, yeah, Councilor Kennedy.
I'm remembering your hearing as I'm sitting here. You came out of the DA's office doing mostly Superior Court work, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I was surprised you went for juvenile court. I think we had a discussion about.
We did. I was torn between district court and juvenile court, and this is where I ended up, and it's.
Experience was in Superior Court.
It was.
We get a lot of openings right now in Superior.
I'm pleased that you remember that, but I haven't looked back. It's been, I feel like there are days,
It's the short term that's gone.
there are days where I feel like I made a difference, and I don't know if I can do that anywhere else. I mean, you know, I see kids every day, and hopefully I can change something, even if I change one of them, you know, one a week or one a month, it's making a difference, and I'm glad I went to juvenile court. Loved every minute of it.
Councilor Julia.
We've had a couple of good judges in Worcester Juvenile who haven't necessarily spent their whole career in juvenile. It's just an observation. What is the challenge in the court right now as far as counsel?
You mean in terms of?
Adequate attorneys?
We go through highs and lows, and we'll have a period where we can't get anybody to take a court-appointed case, can't get anybody to take assignment on a care and protection case, and we'll have, you know, backup of 15 or 20 cases. It seems to be, as the fiscal year is coming to a close, a lot of we see the same lawyers all the time, so a lot of them are over their caseload limit, a lot of them are over their allotted time, so they can't take more appointments. So we wait a month, sometimes 45 days, and then we'll see an influx of either new attorneys or we'll clear up the backlog. Right now, there doesn't seem to be a backlog, and we seem to have people on, you know, we can get an appointment on a case within a day or two now.
Really?
Right now. That'll probably change now when I said that, but I don't think there's a backlog. There are days when I go in there and they'll say, you know, we have seven emergency hearings. None of them have lawyers. We need 4 lawyers on each case.
Okay.
But that's not the case now.
It's good to hear. I always hear that we're having trouble filling.
It tends to be April, May, and June. And I think that's a function of their, you know, their caseloads and their time allotments and all.
Well, how does, I'm curious, do cases spike over and cyclically during the year?
It's an eternal spike. When I was sworn in 2012 or 2011, I think we had 200 or 220 care and protection cases. In 2013, we went up over 600. And 3 years in a row, we were well over 600. I think right now we're probably at 450 a year. So it's doubled in the 12 years.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming. Your testimony means a lot to us.
My pleasure.
You know, I have 2 clerk magistrates. Now, I have Courtney Price, and who is the other? I don't know why I don't have it on this list.
So Courtney Price, who is here, who's the clerk magistrate of Leominster District Court, and actually it's my colleague, Crystal Novoa, who is the third witness.
Okay, so your next witness is clerk magistrate Courtney Price. Welcome back. And did I introduce you yesterday? If I didn't, I apologize. There were so many people, and these are people I voted for, which was a good thing, you know? So it was a wonderful opportunity to see everybody. Thank you.
Oh, no, my pleasure. So unlike Judge Murata, I am still nervous to be here 3 years later. So first and foremost, I would like to thank all members of the council for allowing me the privilege to be here today to speak on behalf of Attorney Currie's nomination to the position of Associate Justice of the Juvenile Court. I would also like to send a personal thank you to Councilors Kennedy, Ferreira, DiPaolo, Duff, Iannella, and Devaney, as it was almost 3 years ago that I sat before you and earned your votes for a life-changing opportunity to serve as the clerk magistrate of the Leominster District Court. It has been a job that I have loved and have been thankful for ever since. But now on to much more important matters of business. Attorney Jennifer Currie. Much has been said of Jen's professional accomplishments, but I have been lucky enough to not only call her a colleague, but a friend. And it's been a privilege to be both. When Jen asked me to speak on her behalf today, she asked me if I was willing to do so. I kind of laughed to myself, and my first thought wasn't if I was willing to do it, but if I would do her justice. And I truly hope that I do. I was lucky enough to meet Jen at the beginning of my career in the Worcester DA's office over 13 years ago, when she was introduced to me as Attorney Ricciardi's daughter. At that point, I had already developed quite a bit of respect for Attorney Ricciardi, and I figured if his daughter was anything like he was, she would be great. And she was, a little bit better. Jen was always a pleasure to work with. I was never disappointed when I was assigned a case that she was defending. She was prepared, she was even-tempered, she was kind, and she was reasonable. My professional relationship with Jen changed when I became an assistant clerk in the Superior Court, and even again when I became the clerk magistrate of the Leominster District Court. Well, her dependability, her preparedness, her even-temperedness, and her respect all remained the same. My appreciation for it increased immensely. It was always a relief to see her in the courtroom. I knew that if I or a judge needed anything, had any questions, or needed to step in on a case, she would. She never shied away from difficult cases or clients, but in fact embraced them. She truly believed that everyone deserved fair representation no matter what their circumstances, and that showed in her consistent work and her reputation. Over the years, our professional relationship turned into a personal one as well, and one that I value as much, if not more. We each have 2 children about the same age as each other, and we've swapped stories of the playing fields and the basketball courts and our life as sports moms, the balancing of a career and family and motherhood, and she was an incredible support system for me when my mother and husband passed away. One of my favorite memories with Jen and her boys actually happened over the summer at the beach. Her and I, our 4 kids and a mutual friend, spent a rainy morning on a beach in Cape Cod. The kids had so much fun with each other and ended with her boys trying to teach my apprehensive, new to softball playing daughter the right way to do a baseball slide on the sand. The morning turned into a late lunch and ended with everyone having ice cream sundaes. As I drove away, my kids immediately asked when we would be able to see them again and if we could actually hang out that night. Jen just has this ability to bring people together, to create a memorable time with maybe not the most memorable weather and still leave you wanting to spend more time with her. Well, I can go on for hours about the kind of colleague, friend, and person that Jennifer Currie is. I'm hopeful that I've done a decent job painting that picture as I sit before you today. The only hesitation I have in supporting Jen's nomination to the Juvenile Court is that I won't get her with me in the District Court anymore. And while I know Jen would be lucky to serve as an associate justice in the Juvenile Court, it would truly be the judiciary that is lucky enough to have such a quality person represent them from the bench. Thank you all very much, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Before I call on the councils, if they have any questions, I want to introduce the council. Councilor Ianella.
Well, how are you next?
Councilor Duff.
Thank you so much, sir.
Councilor Duff. Councilor Kennedy. Councilor DiPaolo. And do you have any questions, councilors?
It was great to see you again.
Nice to see you too, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, and thank you for coming through the snowstorm today. Appreciate it. I just want to ask you something. You have worked with her for quite a while. What do you see? What attribute do you think most that she's bringing to the bench?
There's so many of them. I think her even-temperedness is extraordinary. The courtroom could be a volatile situation, and I've never seen that with her at all. We've obviously had cases against each other, but it never felt like that. She was reasonable. She didn't come in with one agenda and didn't leave until that agenda was met. She was fair. She was reasonable. She was always respectful, especially as a clerk and an assistant clerk in Superior Court. I kind of saw her from a different side, and none of the judges ever were disappointed that she was before us. We always knew that the presentation would be a good one. We knew she'd be prepared. And again, as a clerk in a busy court, there's times we need people to step in or help with other things, and Jen has never once shied away from any of that. So I think her coworkers are going to be very lucky to have someone that would be supportive and someone they can count on from the bench.
It's great. And I got to tell you, people are all nodding behind you while you're saying those things too.
It's all true. Everyone feels the same way about Jen. And I can tell you, when she was nominated in our courthouse, everyone was so happy for her, but so disappointed that we were losing her from our advocate list and from our friend group out there. And she's just been a pleasure to work with. And the entire courthouse was disappointed to see her go, but so happy for her.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
That's too much. We can arrange for it.
No, I mean, I'm a selfless person, so I'm willing to give her up. So if I was selfish, I would try and keep her, but I like her too much to not, so.
Any other councilors want to go through the chair to say anything? Okay, thank you so much. Your testimony means a lot. Okay, so your next witness is Crystal Novia. If I may say it right, Novia. Okay, welcome. Thank you very much. And she is a legal secretary.
Oh, thank you for having me today. I am very nervous. Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. It's an honor. My name is Crystal Novoa, and I had the pleasure of being the administrative legal assistant in the Office of Ricciardi and Ricciardi Attorneys at Law. I began my journey with the office about 6 years ago and was given the opportunity with little experience. As it was an intimidating meeting with Attorney Currie, she made me feel at ease, comfortable during my initial interview. As my supervisor, she always made sure I can go to her with any questions I had. Jennifer is a leader, and as such, she gave me guidance and the tools to succeed. I was welcomed and treated as an equal, and Jennifer has continuously shown me patience and has never faltered, showing me the ins and outs of a busy law firm. I've always had the pleasure, as I've had the pleasure of working with Attorney Jennifer Currie and the office, she has always been empathetic to my family needs and flexibility when it was needed. She showed me how to be a better version of myself, encouraging me to aim high, standing up for what I felt was right. I once had to leave the office to be a stay-at-home mom due to childcare issues. And when I brought it up to her, she understood my position and was sympathetic, encouraged me that when I was ready to come back, I would be welcome to my job should I need it. I was so emotional because in that time I was there, I had always felt a part of the team and felt like family. Jennifer's grace and presence will be greatly missed, and the future looks promising. I will always have the utmost regard for Jennifer's character, as she has been a role model to me ever since I met her. Jennifer's composure and professionalism toward her clients and their family is nothing short of commendable. She can always put a client at ease when explaining a case. The commitment to her care and protection cases and delinquency cases is admirable. She has always, in the time I've known her, gone above and beyond, receiving book donations and having books available in her office for some of the children and teens who may need guidance from another source that can be inspirational and hopeful. That's the commitment she is dedicated to in providing insight through a different lens. Jennifer will be an outstanding judge. Her compassion, knowledge, and willingness to serve the Commonwealth will be an asset. Myself and the community will agree, and it will be noticed that an outstanding attorney will not be available for counsel, but will be a fair and impartial, honorable judge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Counselors, any questions? Your testimony is very valuable. You see her every day? You see the nominee every day? You work with her every day? So you know her when she's under stress, you know when she's overworked, when she's at deadline. So how would you describe her disposition?
She's always kept her composure. We've had very big cases that had very big deadlines, or she's just always kept her composure. We need to do this. It has her everything together that she needs to have in place to get through that deadline, or and negotiating anything that needed to be negotiated.
Well, I have to say, you probably see her more than her husband does, really, every day like that. So your testimony means a lot, because that's a personal, no one here has that connection. So thank you. It was very valuable. Thank you for coming. I was going to ask, you have another witness here coming? Okay, then we covered those. Now, is there anyone here that isn't on the list that would like to say a few words or speak for this nominee? You're welcome to. Okay, hearing not, is there anyone in opposition? Okay. Now, before I ask you to tell us about yourself, I want to read the letter from the governor. Dear councilors, I am pleased to nominate Jennifer Currie to the position of Associate Justice of the Juvenile Court. I submit this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I am enclosing the nominee's resume for your convenience. Sincerely, Maura T. Healy. So having said that, welcome. And why don't you introduce your family and all the supporters here?
Sure. Well, you've already heard from my three amazing witnesses, Crystal Novoa, Courtney Price, Anthony Murata. My parents are here, Vincent and Catherine Ricciardi. My husband is here, Todd Currie. There's actually two members from CASA here to support me, which was a pleasant surprise for me. So I thank you. And that is who's here for me.
Very good. I do want to, it will have no effect on my vote for you, but I just want to tell you my conversation with your father yesterday, both being Italian, he says gravy. Councilor Inella, do you say gravy? Sauce.
I know what the sauce. My late grandmother was gravy. This one. Speaking of that, last night we had spaghetti and meatballs, or ziti and meatballs. If one of my closest friends, I don't know anyone who says this anymore. Councilor Kennedy will say, "Oh, I had macaroni."
Right. Well, excuse me, I just wanted to, excuse me, Councilor? Yeah.
If I called her gravy sauce, she'd throw it at me.
First of all, okay, I didn't want this hearing to get into gravy and sauce, but I just wanted to say that when I talked to your dad, I was very disappointed because I said to him, you go into a restaurant, on the menu, does it say spaghetti and sauce? I mean, spaghetti and gravy. Gravy is for potatoes, for Thanksgiving dinner.
You get the gravy.
I have to add one thing here,
So excuse me, please speak through the chair, please.
if I may, just one thing. Judge President
So,
must be watching. He says it's gravy if it has meat in the sauce.
anyway, we're not, that argument is not going to interfere with my decision here, and I want to say that publicly for your father, because that was a private conversation, and I don't know how we ever got on it, the gravy and the sauce, but anyway, I'm sticking with sauce. But anyway, welcome, and it was really wonderful yesterday. What a tribute to you, and you're on the map for Harvard. Never in that area, Harvard, have we had a judge, and unless it's 200 years ago, I really try to find it. So being the furthest in my district, and on having a snowstorm and having all the people there, what a tribute. And for me, to see the judges, the wonderful judges that I voted for, and clerk magistrates, it was a wonderful opportunity. And to see the wonderful people in the Air Court. So having said that, this is your turn. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Councilor Devaney. Good afternoon. I am honored and humbled to be before you today. I would like to begin by thanking everyone who devoted so much time in reviewing my application and meeting with me during this process. Specifically, thank you to each member of the Governor's Council. Thank you, Governor Healy and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, for this esteemed nomination. Thank you to the Governor's Chief Legal Counsel, Paige Scott Reed, and Deputy Legal Counsel, Derek Hesselheim, for your advice and support. Thank you, Valerie McCarthy, for your help with logistics, and thank you to the members of the Judicial Nominating Commission for your work. Finally, thank you to my husband, Todd, my two children, Tanner and Tristan, who are in school today, my parents, Vincent and Catherine Ricciardi, my three witnesses, Judge Anthony Murata, Magistrate Courtney Price, and Crystal Novoa, my colleague. I'm so grateful for your support. I know that you have a lot of information about my legal background, so I would like to take this opportunity to tell you a bit about my personal background. The City of Worcester has played a central role in my family's story for generations, and for generations, my family has worked hard to give back to the city that has afforded us so much opportunity. Both sets of my grandparents are first-generation American, my mother's side from Ireland and my father's from Italy. Both families immigrated to Worcester. My father's father was one of 12, 7 of them boys, and all 7 of the Ricciardi brothers served in the U.S. military during World War II, the Korean and Vietnam Wars. To this day, there is a memorial dedicated to the 7 Ricciardi brothers right on Shrewsbury Street in Worcester for their service to our country. After his service, my grandfather, along with 4 of his family members, became Worcester City firefighters, with my grandfather retiring as a Worcester lieutenant. My grandparents raised their family in a 3-decker in Worcester. My father was the oldest and was the first person in his family to graduate college, and he quickly found himself pursuing a law degree. He began his career as an assistant district attorney in Worcester and eventually started his own practice in Worcester, representing individuals accused of crimes and injured in accidents. My mother was one of 6, who was also raised in a 3-decker in Worcester. The youngest, she lost her father when she was just 3 years old, leaving her mother a young widow. My grandmother was a classically trained pianist who trained at the New England Conservatory of Music here in Boston. She never remarried and spent her days after her husband died raising her 6 children while working full-time teaching piano to children at the local girls' club in order to support her family. My parents met when my father was in college at Holy Cross in Worcester, and my mother was in nursing school at Worcester City School of Nursing. They settled down in Worcester and had 4 children, of which I am the eldest. We grew up off of Burncoat Street, my father working as an attorney, my mother as an infection control nurse, and then as a traveling nurse, going into people's homes to administer life-saving medicine. This was during the throes of the AIDS epidemic, where misinformation was rampant and the general public was scared and often had strong, misguided views about individuals living with AIDS. My mother taught us compassion, understanding, and grace as she humanized her work and her patients. Midway through my elementary school years, my parents made the decision to take us out of our neighborhood school and sent us to a magnet school in a different part of the city. It was there that I came to know and befriend kids from different backgrounds and cultures who had different upbringings than I did. I appreciated my family and my upbringing, but I began to see the beauty and complexities in other families. I also began to see some of the struggles and difficulties that other families faced. That experience helped me to start to see the world in a more complete way and help shape my empathy. Toward the end of my college career, I started to really think about law school. Like all parents who are lawyers, my father vehemently tried to talk me out of applying. And like most children of lawyers who become lawyers themselves, I didn't listen. Growing up with a lawyer father, especially one with his own practice, meant that as kids, we were dragged to his office from time to help with filing or organizing or cleaning, so following in his footsteps had always seemed possible. And while I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do within the law, I knew that I wanted to help people. I attended Suffolk University School of Law at night and worked during the day, working both part-time in my father's office and working as a law clerk at the Department of Industrial Accidents. I took classes during the summers, and I was able to graduate a semester early. I had always admired my father's work ethic and his commitment to representing those individuals that most others did not want to represent, and so I went to work with him. We worked as 2 solo practitioners, affiliated, working alongside one another, and I was lucky to have such an incredible mentor right out of the gate. His practice focused on criminal defense of adults. While I enjoyed working with the adult population, I soon found myself more and more interested in juvenile court, where I began representing children charged with delinquencies and under our youthful offender statute, and began representing children and families in care and protection cases. Equal access to justice is a personal tenet of mine, and I've dedicated a large portion of my practice to representing indigent children in Worcester County. This is work that has felt particularly meaningful to me, and I've enjoyed serving this community in the city that has given so much to my family. Juvenile court practice is a holistic practice of law, as a lot of the children who come through the juvenile court are dually involved youth, and one must work with various stakeholders to address their individual needs in order to serve, rehabilitate, and protect them. I feel lucky to have spent so many years representing Worcester's youth. It has been an honor to serve our most vulnerable population in a court where real change can occur and where we can have a profound impact on a child's life. I've been fortunate to partner with local schools, agencies, and community programs to better serve our children and families. I very much look forward to continuing that work if confirmed as a justice on the Worcester Juvenile Court. Thank you for this opportunity to tell you a bit about myself, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you.
Yes.
Counselor Ianello, questions?
Thank you very much. Good to see you.
See you.
Very impressed with the witnesses. Great to see the family here today, and also big day. She's doing great. You have a nice background, and I'll make it easy for you when the meeting comes before us tomorrow. Next week, I'll be more than happy to support you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Duff?
Thank you. Nice to see you.
See you.
Great spending all the time we did. you clearly come from a fine family. Your father has a fabulous reputation. But let's talk a little bit about you, the work that you've done and that you're hoping to be doing if you ascend to the bench. What do you think, one of the issues that we don't talk about so much anymore is addiction, alcohol and drugs. Have you seen this or experienced this as an issue very much in the juvenile court system?
Yes, I've represented many children who suffer from substance abuse disorders. And I've also represented many children, subjects of care and protections, whose family, parent or guardian, suffers from substance use disorders. So it is something that we see on a daily basis, really, in juvenile court and in Worcester specifically.
I can imagine that it is one of the more challenging things to see. Are there any beds available for you?
There are. There could be more. There could be a lot more. But
Legislators, I hope you're listening.
yes, we have great partnerships in Worcester. We have great programs in Worcester. We have a great court clinic in Worcester who are really able to work hard to match resources to the people that very desperately need them.
Thank you. Differently abled youth. And when I speak of this, I mean people with different intellectual abilities and physical abilities. Some people might call those disabilities. In your opinion, do you think our courthouses are well enough equipped, or can we do better?
We think we can always do better. But I think that our courthouses are very accommodating. I think juvenile court specifically is a court that is very accommodating. And we can really always work to make better accommodations, but our accommodations are.
Thank you. Because I don't know, this was not, I don't ask trick questions. I know the answer to that question. I don't have an opinion on it. I was just generally curious about it, but especially with younger people, that's important to know. The recent SJC decision on brain development, I mean, we've all been talking about this for a long time, and this was I think it was last week it came out. Do you have any thoughts on that? And I will stop and say that Councilor DiPaolo, in my opinion, is the most expert on this issue here, as he was more recently a teacher as well as an attorney, and really keeps up on the science. I mean, we all try to keep up on the science because science is real. It's not pretend like some people think. And it's today's science. It's not the science of 20, 30 years ago. It's today, and it's different, and it's sometimes hard for people to accept, but I believe science is real. So I just wanted to know any of your thoughts on that decision.
Well, that decision really pertains to emerging adults, and we don't see emerging adults a lot in juvenile court, but there is some overlap. We have children under our youthful offender law who can avail themselves to the juvenile court until 21. And so at times, judges might be sentencing for a probation violation children or emerging adults up to 21. So I certainly think that it's helpful to expand the adolescence and the science behind adolescent brain development to those emerging adults, especially when those fall within the juvenile court. So I'm grateful to the SJC for that decision. I'll be honest, I haven't read the entire thing yet. It's quite lengthy, but I was pleased to read it and to be able to acknowledge that science should apply to individuals over the age of 18.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with that too. And it's a fascinating decision. To me, one of the most fascinating things was who dissented. It wasn't necessarily who you think, but it's also, don't think people quite understand what they're saying sometimes too. What they're saying is, you have the possibility of parole. That doesn't mean you get parole. That just means you get a shot at it. And anyway, interesting thing. We won't go too much into that. My last question, LGBTQ plus youth. Are you experienced working with this community?
Yes, very.
Do you see much of that in your work?
Yes.
Okay, and I would expect that you would. It's, I feel very strongly, I don't have children, but I feel that all of us are responsible for the kids of the Commonwealth. Especially as elected officials, we are and should be held to a higher standard, and particularly those of us on the council, to make sure this population, emerging adults, I like that, they're protected. It doesn't absolve people of crimes, at all, but it means that we're protecting them because we're adults and we have asked the public to elect us, so we should be held to a higher standard. My concern is that and we talked about this, and I'm not going to belabor it, but I do want to say it because I like it to be said aloud. We have a lot of kids who end up living on the streets because they feel safer on the street than they do in their home or a foster home. That's tragic. In the United States of America, particularly, that is tragic. And you, I'm sure, know from your work with CPCS is that what follows so often is these kids end up in, the sex trade. Some of them end up being pregnant. Some of them end up getting HIV, AIDS, or many of the plethora of other diseases that are still out there. And many of them end up becoming addicts. And it's really, as a judge, particularly in this court, you will be charged with the ability to literally change the trajectory of someone's life. And there is no higher responsibility than I can think of. Your reputation is wonderful. Seeing you from CPCS makes my heart sing. Lawyers who've worked with you across the Commonwealth have reached out and said fabulous things about you. And again, kudos to the administration. Another absolutely, in my opinion, stellar appointment. So thank you for applying, first of all, because we can't get folks like you here if they don't apply. So thank you. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council Kennedy.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I was a little curious when I saw that you were pulling up in 2 BMWs and I finally figured out why.
Oh, yeah.
Like a lot of money for a CPCS worker and 2 BMWs, and I didn't recognize your husband when I saw him, but I think he sold me like 6 of them for the last 20 years. Took care of me on them up in at the dealership. I don't have any questions for you. We talked, I made a half joke about all the people calling me about you. I think you're probably the most popular lawyer in Worcester County. Don't tell Rich Rafferty I said that. But I've gotten calls from half of the Worcester bar, I think. Certainly, as I mentioned, Judge Pellegrini not only called me more than once, he texted me before I read that text about the sauce to make sure that I was aware that what a big fan he is. And I've only known him for 60 years now. We went to grammar school together. He pretends he's a Worcester guy. He's an Everett guy. Don't let him fool you. I graduated high school with his wife, but no, obviously what his recommendation means a lot to me. He's been my friend for literally 60 years. 61, I think now. Judge Mehta called me. Called me. Huge fans of yours, both of them, huge fans. One of the best sitting judges and certainly one of the best sitting clerks that I know. That means a lot. My friend Carmine Simonelli called me this morning. Been my friend for about 40 years, 35 years. And the list just goes on and on and on and on. You should have run for office. You would have been fine. But your parents should be very, very proud of you. This is a huge deal. And I congratulate you and I look forward to voting for you.
Thank you very much, Council.
Thank you, Counselor. Good afternoon. I'm sorry that I couldn't be in air yesterday, but I appreciate Counselor Devaney putting on that meeting. The weather prevented some of us from being there, which I regret, but thank you and everyone who you brought for making that trek. The DePaulos and the Sprognas in Worcester have Sunday gravy. That's what we do. I'm going to be brief because we've had many conversations and I've had many conversations about you. This seat has been very important to me. And as some of the people in this room know, I don't practice, I've never practiced as an attorney in the juvenile court. I've been an educator who's been in the juvenile courtroom to support students. I'm sorry?
No. Continue.
Pardon me.
That's for later.
Fair enough. So anyhow, in that capacity, being with children who I'm not getting to know real quick as a counsel, who I have known over the course of a year or multiple years, there's lots of good work that goes on in the juvenile court, but there's a big difference sometimes from judge to judge and how the kids are treated and how they're spoken to, and that whole thing. And so I'm very concerned about getting judges who are going to be what I would say trauma informed, for lack of a better term. And I feel that's going to be you. And I'm not going to ask you about that because I know one of my colleagues is going to in a minute. You know, I'm really grateful that you applied. We need good attorneys in Worcester with backgrounds who maybe haven't been reflected in recent appointments to apply. So I appreciate that. And, you know, Worcester should know that this administration did a tremendous amount of diligence for the seat. I'm incredibly grateful to the governor, to the governor's general counsel staff for prioritizing this seat because we've been waiting to fill this seat for a while. And this is one of, I don't know, we're still in the top 10, right? As far as nominee. So I'm very grateful for that. And Worcester should be grateful. And Worcester should be happy. I look forward to supporting you. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I make one other comment?
Thank you. Yes, Councilor Kennedy.
I just want to point out, I know that Councilor DiPaolo was pushing for the seat for a very long time, and that he's talked to all of us about it a lot. And I know that he was a big fan of yours when your name came up, but I should have mentioned that before, but it's no question.
Thank you.
He's been very supportive as well.
Thank you.
So you have a lot of support.
Thank you.
So I won't have to say it, he said it for me. Thank you, Paul. Council.
Thanks. Welcome, good afternoon, it's good to see you. I just want to start by saying thank you so much for coming out and the time you spent. And I appreciated the conversation that we had that was so expansive, far-reaching. We discussed so many things, some of which I want to bring up again today, and one actually prompted by Councillor Duff's questions, just an additional, we haven't discussed it, but I just wanted to hear from you about it. I actually wanted to start, I know you know how fascinated I was when you mentioned the diversion program, the Learning Lab. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to describe that and expound a little bit on how you've seen it be effective in your county, in your courts, as a judge, God bless you, as a judge, how you anticipate the whens and the whys that you might want to avail yourself of a program like it.
Thank you. Yes, the diversion program in Worcester County, it's relatively new, but it's been incredibly effective. And why it's been so effective is it's given judges and clerks an opportunity to divert away from the court and to put into place certain programs that might very individually target whatever it is that's going on in a particular child's life, whatever traumas they've suffered, whatever adversities they face, whether it is substance use disorder or mental health disorder. It very much tailors it to them through this particular diversion program. It's called the DYS Learning Lab. It is with Family Continuity, which is a wonderful organization, and they've done a lot of work because we've had so many diversion candidates filtered to them, but they've done a lot of work in getting all of those different candidates to completion, which has been really wonderful to see. As a judge, I would see diversion really as an opportunity to work on the issue of dually involved youth. So we have a lot of youth that, come in through a care and protection or a CRA case that end up with a delinquency case. So I see it as an avenue to really divert those children away from delinquency cases, and to be able, again, to tailor in a different way than maybe the CF could provide, because it's a different agency that has different types of partnerships in the community available to really be able to, again, help kids and divert them away from the court system.
Yeah, I was very fascinated to hear about it, and I want to learn more about it, and I appreciate that it exists. And want to dive more in on a more personal for it's the kind of resources we really could benefit from in Western Mass. So I want to understand more and see if I can help connect people. I did want to follow up on trauma-informed discussion with you because I was telling my fellow counselor that I was so impressed. It's an area, trauma, mental health, substance abuse, so they can often be very highly interconnected. But they're areas that I tend to delve in on with nominees when I sit down with them. And I was telling Counselor DePaula that your articulation of the ways in which trauma response can show up and the impact it can have in the courtroom in terms of escalating consequences was just the best expressed, the most nuanced, the most just well articulated explanation of the many, and I'm sure that was only just a collection. I'm sure there's even more. We could have gone on at even greater length, but I appreciate that understanding, and I think it's so important to have on the bench. So I wanted to give you a moment just to, and you don't have to like repeat everything we talked about, but just to share a little bit of your insight into how teenagers who are trauma impacted, the stress of the triggering events that can happen in a courtroom, how they can present in a way that might be interpreted by someone who's not trauma informed as a disrespectful lack of interest or what have you, and the impacts of that. And then as a corollary, again, as a judge yourself, how you would conduct your own courtroom, your awarenesses you would bring and how you would hope to have that play out.
Thank you for that question. Practicing with children and teenagers for the bulk of my career, I've certainly represented a lot of kids with significant trauma histories, and those trauma histories are never the same. They all experience trauma in a different way, and it exhibits in a different way. And so I think the perspective that I would bring is being trauma informed and an understanding that certain behaviors that might come across as possibly defiant or in other ways maybe rude or disrespectful really are a response to that trauma. And being in court is stressful. It's stressful for the best of us, and it is stressful for children. And it's stressful for children who have these difficult adversities or backgrounds or things that they're facing, sort of alone or in a vacuum. So that is an awareness that I would bring to the bench as far as practices that I would employ. I think given my background with so many kids with significant trauma histories, I've learned how to ask questions in a safe way. I've learned how to give space when needed. I've learned probably above all not to take really anything personally that's being displayed, because it really could be and likely is a trauma response. So
I appreciate that, and I think that's such an important understanding and awareness to bring to the work of a judge. So Counselor Duff's questions just sparked in me a train of thought around neurodivergence as an additive to that line of questioning. That is an area that's personally near and dear, more from a very close friend who's become like family, whose brother recently died as an autistic adult. But the prevalent fear of becoming court involved through, he's severely autistic, Black man who would jump out of vans while they were moving, kind of a situation, so case management around, and he was not verbal and could get agitated. So just thinking about neurodivergence in the court, just wanted to hear more on the client side now, right? In your experience, do you have experience working with the neurodivergent population? And
Yes.
to bring awareness similar?
do, and what's incredible about juvenile court and juvenile court law is, our juveniles are afforded greater protections than our adults. And so what is available and an important tool is judges can actually not arraign if there is, a concern about competency of an individual. So a judge could not arraign and get a clinical evaluation done and possibly never arraign, depending on the results of that evaluation. And at the very least, gain some valuable insight as to whatever challenges that individual may face and their ability to participate in the court process. Additionally, with diversion, a judge has great discretion to divert a certain type of case to a diversion track that might be able to better support or provide better resources for someone who has those types of issues. Again, to divert them out of court.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that so much. It's just been such a pleasure getting to know you. The discussions we've had have been so enlightening and just so affirming that your nomination is a wonderful one. And so I thank you for answering my questions and look forward to the vote.
Thank you.
Councilor Paul, I had another question, right?
Very much appreciated. I forgot two things. First, I'm going to put you on the spot, and this is back to the kids I've worked with in my life. Do you think it's important that a juvenile judge periodically would visit group homes and other settings where children going through the court find themselves, sometimes, at the discretion of a judge?
Yes, I do. I think it's important to know, where you might be sending someone and know what that experience would be like for that individual. It should inform the decision.
I think so too, because we get so trapped in our day to day. And even as an educator, seeing the kids every single day for 8 hours a day, you lose track of what's going on outside of those walls. I appreciate that perspective. And the other thing is, not a question, I wanted to acknowledge that we have representatives from CASA here. Court-appointed special advocates. They're a tremendous organization that exists in other parts of the state. Worcester County is exceptional, I think, and I'm really grateful to the juvenile court for its partnership with CASA, and I'm also grateful for the advocacy that goes on for our foster children. And it's great to know that it's a tapestry, it's a community that's serving our children, our most vulnerable children. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And I wanted to thank you for responding to that question. Thank you, Madam Chair. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, you're back, and you're putting that area of Massachusetts on the map. You've got to know that. But it was such a pleasure meeting you. You came out to Watertown to the diner. And I've met over 1,000 now from parole board to judge. And I want to know the whole person. I don't want to come in here and look at a piece of paper and meet someone for the first time. So I really got to know you. And I just think it's wonderful. It doesn't happen all the time that you are a lawyer working with your dad. How great can that be? That's really wonderful. You couldn't have a better mentor, right? So I'm curious about writing. And you're very good at writing. And I looked at your sample. And as a mother, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. And I'm going to have you, I'm not going to talk about it, I want you to. But to think, this young man, 15 years old, young boy, his mother brought him to the police station. And instead of saying, I want you to hear what my son has to say, believe him, whatever, she says, I'm here to find the truth. So she really wasn't there for him. And she said the victim, he was accused of rape. And the victim, she said, was as close as a family member to her. So what she was doing there with her son was no value to him. I read that and I was heartbroken over the whole thing. And the other thing is, not being a lawyer, I thought, wow, she wasn't even told her Miranda rights. So you tell the story, not me.
Sure. So the writing sample was a memorandum of law in support of a motion to suppress statements made by that juvenile client who was 15. He was actually charged with indecent assault and batteries, but his detectives had called his mother and asked if she would bring him into the station to be interviewed, and she agreed and did bring him. The legal issues that were significant were surrounding Miranda and specifically surrounding the interested adult portion of Miranda that applies to juveniles specifically. As I've mentioned, juveniles are afforded greater protections. And so in this particular occasion, given the mother's personal agenda in that she wanted to find out the truth and she cared deeply about the alleged victim, I argued and the court agreed that she was not considered an interested person and did not have the opportunity to truly sit and advise as a parent or interested adult to her son. And therefore he did give statements sort of at her urging, and we were able to get those suppressed eventually.
But what was so amazing was the person who was accusing this young man of rape, raped him.
I think that you are talking about maybe another, I listed so many in the application, but I think that was a different one.
It was very weird anyway, whatever it was. And 25 years, I care about every court, I really do. But I think in my own little way, I've learned about the juvenile court and I'm very concerned about it with the changes in society especially. I didn't know anything about the Governor's Council long before I got on. I volunteered in the court with juveniles on probation for a year. And I worked one-on-one with them. And I would bring them out to lunch or breakfast. And it took a long time to get that trust from them, for them to trust me. And I lived in my own little world with my husband, my 4 children, and I really didn't understand juveniles on probation. And I think there was a little bias there because I didn't know. And you know what? That was the best experience that I could have had in my life. Because now I saw the other side. And I saw what some juveniles go through, the tragic lives they live. One of them was a teenage girl, and she didn't know who her father was. Mother was a prostitute, and she'd lock her in a room every night when she went out. I heard so many horrific stories like that, that I'm really concerned that when I vote for that person on the juvenile court, that you understand both sides. Because there are 2 sides. And so having said that, I am very pleased that you applied and I'm glad that the governor appointed you. Now, you first applied when you were 39, a little too for me, and maybe that was good experience for you to go through it. So I have to say, I'm not fond of having someone 28 years on the bench. But there are exceptions, and I always look at that. And with your experience, there's some people that are, 20, 30 years a lawyer who haven't had the cases that you've had and the commitment that you've shown. So that's what I look at, not the age. But having said that, now, how are you going to stay fresh, up to date, 28 years on the bench?
That's a good question, and that's a fair question. I really have done a lot of work and will continue to do a lot of work educating myself about trauma and being trauma informed. I've done a lot of work and will continue to do a lot of work recognizing my own bias and the bias that I see around me. I will avail myself to trainings and to applying case law and to the evolution of adolescent brain development and how that impacts us. So I am very committed to this population, and I'm committed to keeping myself educated and informed in order to help them.
When I think of people, like your age, 42, and I look back on my 25 years, I don't see in their resume pro bono. I don't see them involved in their community or organizations. They don't have time, they say. And you are unique, and I have to say that, and I like it. It's a good unique. And one of the things that is important to me, what you have done and with your extracurricular time, and tell us about the tree what was it? That organization and what it does for people. Is it a tree?
It's a tree house and it's in our backyard and my husband built it. And it
Tell us about that.
regular treehouse, I suppose. But it is, we as a family, my husband and my two sons, sort of use that as a venue every year to put on a community-wide event to collect toys. We partner with a few in-town organizations that we are a part of, and we, are able to collect toys to provide it for some organization in Worcester. It's fun for the kids.
And there's another organization that you are the president of?
So I believe I served on a board as a community service chair. So that was it.
Tell us how that benefits people.
Sure. So the town where I live, Harvard, Mass, there was a Harvard Family Association. So it's an organization for parents with young kids that's really a support network. It does meal trains for new moms. It connects parents to one another for resources. And so I served on that board and put on community events for that. It's how we started our treehouse organization. Was when I was serving on that board. My husband was serving on a different board in town, and we together came up with that.
Well, I have often said I would never vote for anyone that didn't have compassion, and it's stamped on your forehead, compassion. But I did want to, I wanted to read verbatim because I was very impressed when you asked discretion of a judge. Let me see if I can find it here. Okay, the question that you were asked, could you characterize your own views on how this discretion ought to be exercised, a judge's? And you wrote, the mission of the juvenile court is to rehabilitate juveniles while simultaneously protecting the public from delinquent and criminal behavior. Each juvenile that comes before the juvenile court deserves careful consideration in sentencing to balance their particular backgrounds, trauma histories, adversities, brain development, and family situations to best promote the juvenile's rehabilitation while keeping the public safe. 25 years, I've never seen that question answered that way. And I think it had to be said publicly. I think that's wonderful. And that's what the juvenile court is about. So talking about brain development, I do believe, that juveniles, there's an age and who knows what it is where the brain is fully developed. Where I disagree is the science saying that the brain isn't developed till 25. And I think life experience challenges that. I have a friend, dear friend, Richie Moxley, who gave his life on a battlefield in Vietnam. He joined, his brain fully developed. He turned 20 and he was killed that week. And I think, and I have said it to you, I think of President Carter, married 80 years. His wife was 18. He was 21. And I think their brain was fully developed, that they wanted to marry, have children, and look what they did with their lives. So I really challenge that, but I do think it does relate to juveniles. But I cannot ever agree that a 25-year-old is a juvenile. And that's what this whole thing about brain development seems to imply. Because 25 people have gone through college, marry, have families, coaches involved in a lot of things and have gone on with their lives. It just doesn't seem like that would be true. And for myself, I had 4 children before I was 25. I think my brain was developed. And my husband was 21 when he got married. So I think the life experience kind of questions the science. So having said that, we'll probably disagree. But now, some of the cases that you've had, was there a murder one of the case, there was something that was similar to that. I mean, there's been people, I don't know how you keep people safe in the 209As. I really don't. How did you operate during pandemic? I hope it wasn't on the phone because that really bothered me. Some of the courts had to be on the phone, but how do you know someone if you don't see them in person and look in their eyes and see their, how did that work?
Well, Worcester Juvenile Court did operate, largely on Zoom. However, with kids that were held in custody, the custodies would come in to court, and lawyers would still go out and still visit those clients, in DYS facilities, mask up and visit with them. So that's how we operated during that time. I think each court was a bit different, but that's how Worcester largely operated.
So when you look back on your career, and I'm sure there's more than one, is there one case that you had that was so rewarding that you'll always remember?
Yes. Yes, one case, and I included it in my application, wasn't particularly legally that significant. It was for my client, but essentially I had argued a motion to suppress on a quite significant trafficking in narcotics and firearms case. I ended up being successful on the motion, which was wonderful for my client. However, what was significant about it for me is that during the time that the case went on, that we litigated it, it was several months. He was held as a dangerous person and then indicted and held again as a dangerous person. So he was held for, I believe, about 8 or 9 months total. But during that time, he was able to get involved with a community organization that provided a wonderful mentor to him. And what was so significant for me is that mentor spent so much time with him, visited him in DYS, came to every single court date. And long after I was done being involved with the case, the mentor stayed involved in this young man's life. And why I've carried that is sort of seeing the positive changes that mentor made in this particular child's life. We never saw him back in court, which was a good thing. He graduated high school, he entered the workforce, he had a child and a family of his own. And recently I saw this same mentor in court. He was there on another case and we had connected because we spent so much time working together on this particular case together. And he shared with me that, not only is this child still, or child adult now, doing so well, but he now is a mentor within the same program helping Worcester's youth. So for me, it really cemented how important the partnerships between the court and local community organizations can be and how impactful that they can be in helping children.
That's great. Now, what was the most disappointing case that you had?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think any time that, you see a child come back to court is disappointing. You feel like what you've done hasn't worked, or that you need to find different services or help in a different way. So it's always disappointing when I see a client of mine come back to court.
So you've been, 16, 17 years in the juvenile court. So you've seen a lot, you've seen the changes and, and we heard that, and I said it often, society has changed and unfortunately, it's a much more dangerous society than when you started 16, 17 years ago. What changes do you think the juvenile court needs?
That's a good question. I would like to see, and I think I mentioned it earlier, less dually involved youth, and I'd like to see more use of diversion. Every time a child comes into contact with court, it's more likely that they'll come into more contact with court. So I think more diversion is a very powerful tool to really affect some change.
Okay, we talked about this when we met for hours. It was really wonderful. I got to know you, your children, your family. It was wonderful. I want to know, as far as juvenile court, they have changed the age of the juveniles. Do you think it should go further?
I was expecting that question. like we've had in our conversations, I certainly am aware of that legislation that is pending. I see very much both viewpoints. I see people who very much are in support of that, in protecting the record of juveniles, and I certainly understand the other side of it, and that the juvenile court has a lot of cases and a large caseload. What I can say is that I will uphold and apply whatever it is that the legislature decides.
I have my own little opinion. Wouldn't like to see it extended. I think that the juvenile court is overworked. I think, in this day and age, they have a lot to do, and I don't think they can take on more if they extend that age. That's my own personal feeling. I think it's good the way it is. So, having said that, with juveniles, what is it, with juveniles, what do you think? Is it family values broken down? Is it drugs? What do you think is the primary, if you could think of the primary change that's happened with juveniles getting involved in crime?
Well, I think actually our juveniles involved with crime, those numbers have decreased, which is a good thing. But our kids are facing so many things. They're facing a mental health crisis that was exacerbated by COVID. They are facing significant substance abuse disorders. So I think really all of those things combined are problematic for our kids and require special care and attention.
So, is there anything that you'd like to add now, after we've asked these questions of you, that you'd like to talk about your experience that we haven't covered?
I think no.
I've gone into a lot of your cases yesterday and when we met, so I don't want to go through all of those. But, God bless you for wanting to be in the juvenile court. I can't even imagine some of the horrific stories you hear. And there's no easy solution for them. There isn't. And from my little experience, that was a long time ago, and society has changed since then. It hasn't got better. So I'm really concerned about that. Do you think that there's enough programs for juveniles when they go before you as a judge that you can send them to?
I think you can always use more programs, but I'm really impressed with Worcester's programs, and I'm impressed with the partnerships that exist in Worcester. I'm quite happy with them.
Okay. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you and going through the hearings. I can't thank you enough, and I thank everyone for coming. And I wish you all good luck. I don't have a poker face. I've been smiling since I read your resume. And I'm very pleased that you did apply, and I'm very pleased. We have an administration that I'm over the moon, because I've been here 25 years. I started with the best, and that was Governor Salucci, God rest his soul. So I can't say that I didn't serve with good governors, but from the past governor to this one, a lot different. We're not getting political people, we're getting people who are qualified and experienced, and I want people out there to know that. Okay, I'm not politically correct. We're getting good people, and you are one of them, and I can't thank the governor enough. I can't thank you enough for deciding to do it again. And for people who have come out and have been rejected, it's a new day, it's a new administration, and I beg you, please apply again, because we've lost some good people, and the political people aren't jumping the line anymore. So thank you all for coming, and good luck.